Zero Waste video series. This week we'll be talking about preventing food waste. We partnered with our friends at the Natural Resources Defense Council, or NRDC, to learn more about the scope of food waste and how each of us can be part of the solution to make sure that food makes it into our bellies instead of the landfills. Let's get into it. Imagine going to the grocery store, getting 5 bags full of food and dropping 2 of those bags in the trash on your way out of the store, and then thinking nothing of it. That is essentially what we are doing with our food today. In the US, up to 40% of food goes uneaten. That much food would be enough to feed 164 million people their full diet every day of the year. Why is food waste a problem? You may think food waste isn't a big deal, that you can just compost it or it'll break down naturally in the landfill, right? But when we waste food, we waste all of the resources it takes to get that food to our plates. The tremendous amount of water, land, and energy used to grow our food, move it from the field to the store, and keep it at a cool temperature. In fact, wasted food is the single largest item going into our landfills, and when it winds up there, it emits methane, a potent greenhouse gas. If food waste globally were a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China and the United States. According to Project Drawdown, reducing food waste ranks number 3 on the list of the top 100 most impactful interventions to address climate change. So we don't just want to compost food waste or throw it in the trash. We want to prevent the waste and the environmental impacts from happening in the first place. To do that, let's look at where the bulk of the waste is happening. Food waste happens across the entire supply chain, from farms to processing to the store. But in the US, the largest contributor to food waste is at home. NRDC's report looking at where food is wasted found that more than 2/3 of all food discarded in the homes of people surveyed was potentially edible. In Denver, the average Denver resident wastes 4.2 pounds of food each week. The most common foods that Denverites toss: coffee poured down the drain, milk, bread, chicken, and bananas. So how do we reduce food waste at home? The NRDC has a great website with tips and pointers to reduce food waste at home called SaveTheFood.com. It's filled with recipes, storage and shopping tips, and great articles to get creative about reducing food waste. Let's look at some key tips. Tip number 1, try meal planning and shopping with a list. The Save the Food Meal Prep Mate can help you make a shopping list, portion your meals, and maximize what's in your fridge. Start by thinking about what meals you want for the week, including what food you've already got in your fridge and pantry, how many people you'll serve, and what kind of leftovers you'll want and can commit to eating. Once you've planned your meal and checked your current food supply, make a shopping list. When you get to the store, exercise restraint and use that list. Tip number 2, get creative and use more of your produce. For example, did you know that celery leaves are great when used as an herb to enhance flavor in soups and salads? And whoever said that peels need to get trashed or composted? With lots of fruits and veggies, all they need is a good scrub, and the peels are good to eat. And there are lots of ways to revive foods that are on their way out. Brown bananas, peel them and put them in a banana bread or in the freezer for smoothies. Tip number 3, remember the leftovers. Leftovers get buried in the fridge and forgotten. One way to remember leftovers is to put a sign on them that includes the date it went into the fridge. Designate a place in the front of your fridge for them to live until they're eaten. Tip number 4, use proper storage. Proper storage is key to making your food go further so that you can eat every last bite of edible parts of your food. Save the Food has an entire library of different foods with instructions on how to store them so that they stay fresh and tasty for longer, like storing celery upright in a glass of water on a fridge shelf, or using the freezer. Putting foods in the freezer is kind of like pressing the pause button, and so many foods taste just as good after they've been frozen. Did you know that you could even freeze eggs? Just crack them and whisk them and store them in the freezer for up to 2 months. Thaw them out in the refrigerator before you use them. Tip number 5, understand date labels. Date labels such as use by, sell by, and expiration dates on foods can be confusing. The reality is that these labels actually have very little to do with food safety. They're not federally regulated. Generally, date labels are more of a guesstimate of when certain foods will be at their peak quality. But if you go past the use by, best by, or sell by date, it doesn't mean that your food will be suddenly spoiled. One good strategy for figuring out if food is still good, if you've stored it correctly at safe temperatures, is to use your eyes, nose, and taste to check the quality. If you're concerned, check out Save the Food for tips. Tip number 6, support systemic change. Food waste is the result of systemic problems within the food system. As consumers, we have the power to significantly reduce food waste, but we also need to work to change the system that leads to food waste on a bigger scale. Vote with your dollar and be active in creating a resilient, sustainable, equitable, and healthy food system by supporting your local community garden and purchasing from farmers markets, signing up for a CSA. Thanks to the NRDC for these great tips, and thank you for joining us to learn how to prevent food waste. This is the last lesson of the Zero Waste video series. Thank you for joining us and learning about zero waste from home. EcoCycle will start our Plastic-Free July Challenge soon. Sign up for weekly tips on reducing plastic use and waste.